everyone. My name is Chetna Ramrao Kamre. I am currently studying Master in Structural Engineering at Rajaram Bapu Institute of Technology. My topic of my presentation is training of existing pre-engineering building for additional futuristic load by using the steel plate review. These are the overviews of my presentation: introduction, literature review, research findings, conclusion and recommendation, and reference. Introduction. As everyone knows, in steel manufacturing sector, India is the second fastest developing nation. Also, steel construction plays important role in development. In modern construction, growth of the prefabricated structure rapidly increase. One of the concept in prefabricated structure is pre-engineered building. Actually, pre-engineered building are first marketed in 1960s, but nowadays the growth of the pre-engineered building is increasing the modern construction. So pre-engineered building is the type of metal building with enclosure system, consists of structural framework and roofing and cladding, and it is manufactured in factory and assembled on the site fixed by the bolted connection. The structural framework is majorly divided into two parts. First is the primary members and second is the secondary member. In primary member, it included beam and column. Generally, hot roll I section is used for the beams and column. Secondary member, it includes purlin and girths. For purlin and girths, Z or C type of cold form section is used. The main important factor for the design of the pre-engineered building is bending moment, because it shows the variation of section throughout the length. On the basis of the bending moment, the section will be provided at a location according to where there is needed. By using the tapered I section, which is made up of built up thin plates. Due to this factor, the pre-engineered building can be up to 30% lighter than the traditional steel building. There are various applications of pre-engineered building, such as complex industrial facilities, warehouses and distribution centers, stock houses, shopping malls, resorts, motor courts, office building, cabin, service complexes, aircraft hangars, athletic, educational venues, temple, fun stadium, hospital, and any other type of industrial building. These are the figure of the pre-engineered building. So, strengthening of the existing pre-engineered building. From last few years, various systems like solar panel, exhaust fan, sprinkler, pipes, electrical system, and mechanical conduits are installed on the rooftop of the pre-engineered building. New pre-engineered buildings are designed by considering this type of load. But in these days, existing pre-engineered buildings are facing this problem because of overload or additional load, the structural steel can be damaged. So therefore, it is important to strengthen the structural steel to increase the ability of handling more load in the future. Structural strengthening is the process of upgrading structure to improve performance of existing load or to increase the strength of the structural member to carry additional load. There are two types of the structural strengthening. First is the bonding the CFRP plates, that is carbon fiber reinforced plate, and second is the steel plate strengthening. I focus on the steel plate strengthening because steel plate strengthening is the very common technique or most popular technique due to its low cost, uniform material, easy to use, high ductility, and fatigue strength. Strengthening of the existing structure while they are under loading, when the load is temporary relief is possible. These are the literature review. Very few researchers are review on the steel staining technique. First paper is the evaluating the efficiency of staining hot roll eye section steel beam by using additional plate and inclined stiffener with various width. The objective of this paper is effectiveness of the staining hot roll eye section steel beams by the welding inclined stiffener of varying width to the both side of the wave and adding the additional steel plate to the bottom and top of the flange. They concluded that as per the load deflection and load strain responses, the result shows that when the additional plate on the top and bottom of the flanges and addition the inclined stiffener to the beam, it becomes stiffer than the reference beam. And when the additional plates width is increases, this result shows the more magnified and more apparent. Second paper is the staining of steel I-beam by welding steel plate before or while loading. He investigated that the experimental study on the welding steel plate to strengthen the steel beams prior to or during loading. They concluded that when the cover plates are welding on the I-beam, the result shows that the load carrying capacity is expanding up to 5.7% and deflection is reduced by 30.7%. Third paper is the straining of the steel beams, again lateral buckling and lateral torsional buckling. They studied the behavior of lateral buckling and lateral torsion buckling of the steel eye section beam by using the steel plate and the steel angle section. They concluded that when this steel plate with steel angle section on the bottom of the compression flange and top of the tension flange, the result shows the good result shows and result in deflection stresses. Fourth paper is the flexural behavior of roll steel eye section with different stiffener. They studied the flexural behavior of eye section steel beam strengthened by the stiffener at various positions, that is vertical, horizontal, inclined stiffener with various shape along with the beam. The result have considerably good improvement for the load and deflection. Fifth paper is the staining techniques of steel structure and overview. They studied various types of the method for staining that are important to enhance the load bearing capacity of the steel structure. They concluded that the carbon fiber reinforced polymer, that is CFRP, is increase the strength of the steel structure, and also the stiffeners are the most effective method to increase the load bearing capacity. Sixth paper is the numerical study on the staining surface corroded partially enclosed beam by the wave expanding. They concentrated on that the way of the behaving the RC bar reinforced by the wave expanding and displaying the some extent PEB pillars with fluctuating consumption. They concluded that the most efficient strategy for the increasing strength of the wave extending research findings from the study of literature. Some research findings are carried out are as follows. First, steel plate staining technique is used to increase the moment of inertia for the purpose of decreasing the vertical midspan deflection and horizontal strain, and also increase the ultimate load carrying capacity of hot roll eye section by adding the steel plates welded at top and bottom of the flange and inclined stiffener both side of the wave. Some researchers are used to steel plate staining for the purpose of the flexural behavior and increase the strength of the I-beam. The staining technique is popular and effective. The researchers are adopted different types of the staining patterns. for the steel bar using steel plate section and the steel angle section as shown in the figure 2. Here is the pattern number, straining pattern and description. First is the only steel beam. Second is the steel beam strengthened with steel plate on the bottom of the compression flange at intermediate point. Third is the steel beam strengthened with steel plate on bottom of the compression flange throughout its length, full length. Fourth pattern is the steel beam strengthened with the steel angle section on the bottom of the compression flange along its full length. And fifth pattern is the steel beam strengthened with steel angle section on the bottom of the compression flange and top of the tension flange along its length. Conclusion and recommendation. From the above study, it concluded that pre-engineered building is usually steel structure. Due to high grade of steel, the structure becomes reliable and required less raw material. Cost and time required for the construction is less, and it gives aesthetic appearance to the building. Therefore, in modern construction, use of pre-engineered building is increases. The strengthening of the existing pre-engineered building is very important to avoid the failure of overload, impact of heavy loads, seismic condition, change in function, error during construction. Straining improves the load carrying capacity of the existing structure. Third conclusion is from the study it is shown that there are two different type of the straining technique of the straining. First is the CFRP and second is the welding steel plate. Nowadays CFRP plates are most popular use for straining. Only few researchers focus on the steel plate straining. There is good fourth conclusion is there is good scope for structural steel for existing pre-engineered building for additional load by using steel plate with different types of staining patterns because of its availability and cheapness. Also, there is scope for using different types of the material. For example, mild steel, galvanized iron steel plates, as no significant studies are in the literature. These are the references I have taken for this review paper. Thank you for all listening.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, as the time zones may be. So, my sincere thanks to my mentor and co-author, Dr. Vijay Kumar Vardarajan, and I also thank the organizers of this conference. Now, my topic for today is marrying IT with OT in coal power plants. Experience, challenges, a framework to overcome the challenges. Now I'll be connecting to my some of my predecessors who are speaking, like Hussein Albert. He spoke about power plant, and Joseph James, who spoke about a web portal in college, and Bindu Savant, metaverse in HR, Gautami, ANSYS workbench in engineering. So these are all various applications of software. So coming to power plant, how IT and OT can be married, that is the topic of today. And my contents flow like this: objectives, drivers for IT OT marriage, methodology adopted, and sortie, there's a framework and a way forward. Despite a plethora of benefits digitalization, IT OT marriage has got, it has not percolated the power plant industry to the extent possible, mainly in India. So we have been trying in various power organizations. why it is not happening so. So then it intrigued me, why? Let me explore the reasons for that. That is how this study is taken up. Before that, let me just brief about drivers for IT/OT marriage. Business agility is the need of the hour today. In that, in power plants, because of renewables and other new energy sources, the conventional power plants are facing issues like load fluctuations and intermittent load demands. Because of that, there's a need for faster responses and flexibilization. There are two drivers here. One is internal driver, the changing workforce due to retirements and aging, mistakes reduction, accountability, accessibility, and transparency. And external drivers are stakeholders like central pollution control boards, central electricity authority, CERC, and other things. Few use cases presently are, some examples are here. There are more than 200 odd use cases are there used in bits and pieces, but no place they are being used in a holistic fashion. Sporadic use is there here and there. For example, performance optimization and diagnostic optimization, PADO. Then EAM. EAM is enterprise asset management, digital twin. Then RAP, risk assessment and priority planning, digital worker, and so on and so forth. Methodology adopted for my study, I have taken up exploratory research method with abductive reasoning approach. And my study is qualitative design with a survey, structured interview, and Delphi strategies were adopted. Around 64 papers were reviewed. And what are the challenges out of these 64 papers were collated? 90 factors were collated and talked to various industry experts and SMEs like Aveva, GE, Schneider, Siemens, Black & Veatch, and found that what are the major areas so that we can focus narrowly and converge on some conclusions. That is how 6 areas of focus were identified with the help of SMEs. And after identification of that, we have sent a Google survey to around 95 SMEs. Out of these identified focus areas, for instance, strategy, which I will be speaking in a while, what are the salient ones? We got 3 salient ones in each area. Then after that, I conducted focus interviews and workshops. Then Delphi. Finally arrived at a framework to overcome these challenges so that the IT/OT marriage can be deployed seamlessly. So these are the 6 focus areas as per SMEs: strategy, realigning business process for product and service delivery; operational excellence, realigning people, process and tools; regulations; technology, IT, OT and ET convergence; innovations; and economic considerations, because everything has to go with money. Out of these 6 areas, if you find out of 90, 20 reasons fall in operational area, followed by 18 in strategy. All others you can see here. Now, based on Google survey, the ranking was done by the SMEs. Out of identified 16 strategy areas, 3 are the salient ones: not willing to be the first movers, decision makers dilemma, notion that digitalization is for services, not for plants. Coming to operational excellence, out of 20 factors, 3 are the salient ones: perceived complexity of use, privacy breach, qualms, silos, and legacy systems. Coming to regulatory, misaligned financial incentives, especially in regulated markets, data ownership and IP rights, not addressing the customer's security and privacy concerns. In technology, compatibility among existing and proposed technologies, domain expertise gaps between IT and OT experts, technology capability and integration. Innovation, machine learning and artificial intelligence based use cases to enhance reliability and efficiency, demonstrability of the results, technology impact lags. Coming to the last one, but a very important one, economic considerations, tangibility of digitalization benefits is difficult to demonstrate, and low load factors of the conventional power plants due to onslaught of renewables in resulting in low revenues. So they are not able to invest here, and huge dues, even if they generate power, there are huge dues to be realized from their off-takers, constraining their working capital. Now, once we know that these are the focus areas, 6 focus areas, and around 6 threes are 18 salient points. So we have conducted focus interviews again and workshops. We brainstormed, and based on Delphi workshop, a framework is developed how to deal with these challenges. So a framework is holistic framework is developed like this, with having around 6 steps. I'll show you the flow in the next slide. The framework flows like this: POG, Performance Optimization Group, consisting of cross-functional teams with all areas, because decisions are made in silos in big organizations. That is one of the reasons for red tapeism. To avoid that, POG is formed, which does the market scan and carry out the feasibility studies and techno-economic viability studies, and also resolve issues among different power silos and different technicalities and functionalities, so that they come up with minimum functional specifications of the product or a IT and OT thing to be deployed. Then once that is done, they define it, design it, and put forward and get a buy-in from the customer or end user. In that also, then end user, you will not go with one product, will go with the 2 or 3 alternatives, so that cost benefit analysis, features versus benefits is well addressed to. Accordingly, budget allocation can be done. Once budget is allocated, then a PMO is established. Then PMO will look into its implementation, like a POC, a rollout, and scale it up. After implementation, operations, during operations, monitoring for continual improvement and taking all security and other issues and improving further, fine-tuning the product. The POG has focused tasks like concept to commissioning documentation, issues resolution. Mainly they have to facilitate collaboration, breaking silos, monitor and review progress reports. In progress, based on metrics, time-based, cost-based, quality and quantity-based, finally customer satisfaction-based. The IT-OT integration looks like this: field to boardroom. You can see in the field sensors, actuators, field devices, you have several things. And there are some process controls, PLCs, DCS and other things, productions and interlocks over that. Above that, there's a supervisory controls, SCADA, HMI and other things. So these are all part of forming part of OT. Then comes slightly higher level operations management, where you do scheduling, AOPs, diagnostics, and other things, annual operating plans. Then comes business planning, boardroom, KPI and balance score driven strategy and goals. This integration happens once it is implemented properly with buy-in from all functions. The overview of a successful marriage looks like this. It starts from data capture, where a data architect is involved, to data validation, data storing, where a data engineer is used, and security is taken care by data administrator. Then it comes to data scientist arena, where applications, operating system, and resources, different apps, different platforms are integrated seamlessly, so that finally they give you insights, visualization, and analysis, so that uh, the concern can respond, integrate, and govern as per the needs of the organization. The way forward on the study is, though these 90 challenges, SORTIE, strategy, operational excellence, regulation, technology, innovation, and economic considerations can be addressed using this framework. This limited to in-house expertise. We are using only in-house cross-functional teams called POG, Performance Optimization Group. So as an extension to this study, further AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, AR and VR can be added in OT part, and this can be outsourced also as a model, so that features and minimal functional requirements could be come from in-house, whereas implementation part, definition and design can come from outsourced part, including implementation. And the third suggestion could be DD boot, where the third party as a turnkey, they define, design, and build, operate, own, and transfer the model after successful implementation, so that initial investment can be brought from outside, and it could be paid in installments as it maybe in 5 to 7 years down the line. This is the way forward. So this is how actually we did in one of my power plants where we are working. We implemented this framework, and we saw that okay, at least small scale, seamlessly we could deploy some of the IT OT devices, uh, uh, leading to a happy IT OT marriage. Thank you very much. And these are the references used during the study. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tabish Nabi, and I'm a PhD student at Doctoral School of Literary and Cultural Studies, University of Debrecen, Hungary. And today I'll be presenting on the topic of African American Muslim narratives. And the topic of my presentation would be Faith and Resilience, the Religious Journey of Umar ibn Said. Starting with the overview of the transatlantic slave trade and Muslims, it is, I guess, Alan D. Austin, one of the very renowned African American, the authority on the history of Islamic antebellum Muslims. He says that 10% of the West African slaves were actually sent to North America between 1711 and 1808 were actually Muslims. And it is Edward Curtis who has written this very eminent text on Muslims in America, A Short History, who actually affirms Alan D. Austin's claim that 10% of the enslaved Africans were brought to the United States were actually Muslims. And given the bird's eye view of Muslim slave narratives, these slave narratives were basically given the least attention. And Alan D. Austin, as you can see, the excerpt on the slide, he actually affirms the notion that the African American Christian slave narratives were actually spoken of, but African American Muslim slave narratives were generally overlooked. And he says that it is because of the neglected, it was neglected by the modern America's eagle-eyed historians and storytellers. And talking about the significance of Muslim slave narratives. These are basically nowadays being incorporated in the American studies and are being recognized and included in the canon of African American literature and history. And these narratives actually give us the they reveal the cultural, religious, and social dimensions of African Muslim slaves, highlighting their resilience and agency and contributions. And third of all, they actually give us a glimpse of Islam's role in African American history and deepens our understanding of the transatlantic slave trade and its complex experiences. While I was dabbling with the text of Umar ibn Said, who happens to be a Muslim slave in the 18th century. In the 18th century antebellum America, this study actually contends that Umar ibn Said's slave narrative, which is called The Life, that was published in 1831, he extensively drew upon the influence of his religiosity to actually navigate through his social, cultural, and spiritual identity. And while while the methods of coping could bear a resemblance with the fellow slaves, but it is actually his unwavering commitment, his faith, that he's enabled to interpret and express his hardships in very different and very unique ways. And it is Umar's steadfast dedication to his palpable religious and cultural framework, which is significantly contributing toward this transformative process. The objectives of my study are it actually explores the significance of religion within the context of Umar ibn Said's slave narrative, entitled The Life of Umar ibn Said, that was published in 2011, which is actually the current the current version of his slave narrative, and how it highlights its role in the accommodation of social, cultural, and religious identity. It also examines how Umar ibn Said utilizes his religious memory to cope with the trauma and derive meaning from his circumstances, revealing its profound relevance for resilience and navigating adversity. The theoretical framework that I'm going to use for my study is the main theorist is in the memory studies. Memory studies would be Morris Holbox and Alida Asman and Jan Asman and Piranora, who actually spoke about the collective and the cultural dimensions of memory, the role of religious memory in African American Muslim slave narratives. And I'll be also using, the study also employs the cultural trauma theory by Alexander and Ironman, Ron Ironman, who are the authorities over cultural trauma theory. Also, my study would employ the theories on intersection of slavery, trauma, and Muslim identity. And this study shall also incorporate accommodation theories and the theories by Melville Herkowitz, who speaks about the survival of African culture in the African American slaves. And also, the study shall be incorporating social identity theory by Henry Tessels. Giving a brief introduction about the slave, the slave and his narrative that I have actually selected for my study. Omar ibn Said was born to a very wealthy family in West Africa in Putatur in 1770, and he was born somewhere between the rivers Gambia and Senegal, and subsequently was abducted and sold into slavery in the United States in 1807, and the modern translations that are available of his slave narratives, of his slave narrative, The Life. The very first translation, the very first text came in the year 1831, and it was subsequently translated in the year 1925, and The text was somehow lost and was found in Virginia in a trunk in the year 1995. And the text that I am dabbling with in this study is actually translated by Ala Al-Rais, whose title of the book is A Muslim American Slave, The Life of Umar ibn Said. Umar ibn Said basically was sold to the owners living in the South Carolina first. And when the masters went too brutal upon him, he actually escaped the tyranny and tried to reside somewhere where he was again found. And then he was sold to Jim Owens, the Owen family, who happened to be very great masters to him, which Umar ibn Said actually later translates in his narrative also. And the very first point about his narrative that actually I came across was his Islamic identity and religious education became a very important factor to shape up his experiences on the slave plantation. Talking about the area he came from, the West Africa, it was once upon a time a religious center. And we see that Michel Gomez in his book actually affirming to the fact that in the middle of the Snaggle Valley, the region was basically a Muslim polity, and it was established almost in the year in the 11th century. And subsequently, we see that Futtatur, the place where Umar ibn Said actually belongs, it actually became a very powerful center and a very learned center those days for Umar also. So Umar actually completed his 25 years of education under three Muslim sheikhs, and it was only in Futtatur that his religious as well as cultural experiences were shaped. And it is these religious and cultural experiences that he employed and tried to actually combat and resist the slavery and the forced colonization that he happened to experience during his lifetime. And also because he was a Muslim and all Muslims were actually supposed to read and learn Quran, and Quran language being the Arabic, this became a positive point for Umar ibn Said, because the scripture written from right to left actually helped him to write the verses against the slavery. And this was his kind of resistance that he put forward and he exercised to actually combat the slavery. And as Alan D. Austin also says that he actually employed a strategic hybridity. Umar was regularly actually willing and able to reassure all visiting Christians that he was a true convert, because with most of the slaves that the thing that would happen is the forced conversion. So he kind of employed a sort of strategic hybridity to give them a notion that he was true convert. But in contrast, if we if we dig deeply into his narratives, we actually see that he was writing the first chapter of the Quran in the form of the Lord's Prayer and the 23rd Psalm. Also, the region he belonged to was Futtatur, and Futtatur becomes a place of memory, rather place of religious memory for him. And we see that Pirinora actually saying that memory crystallizes and secretes itself. Uh, this is the place of memory, and it is Futtatur for Umar ibn Said that he secretes himself and his experiences in and around Futtatur. We see that he launching his text with these two lines: "My name is Umar ibn Said. My birthplace is Futtatur between the two rivers," and this place of memory, according to Nora, should be actually definable in three senses of the world: material, symbolic, and functional. And we see the three elements actually present in Umar ibn Said's the life. And tour is actually not just a physical and a geographical topography for him. It is actually a religious, historical, and a social landscape for him. And it is Sharma in 1995 who affirms that landscape actually embodies memories, and therefore they can be historical in many ways. So photo tour as a landscape, Umar actually actualized all his remains and the knowledgeable understanding through photo tour. We see an excerpt from Umar ibn Said's the life, that there came to our country a big army, killed many people. It took me and walked me to the big sea and sold me into the hands of a Christian man. So we see that photo tour is becoming a religious, historical, and a social landscape for Umar ibn Said. And the religious memory he employs to resist to have a basic resistance against slavery was he uses a Quranic style of narration to draw his slave narrative. We can see that, O people of North Carolina, O people of South Carolina, O people of America. That is how also Quran starts, and Umar ibn Said also is starting his narrative with the same scheme. I'm sorry. And we see that he's employing very strategic. He is very strategic in actually defending himself against slavery. He uses chapter Mulk and chapter Nasr from Quran, which are against the slavery. And the verse that I've highlighted from chapter Al-Mulk is, those who disbelieve in their Lord will suffer the punishment of hell. What an evil destination. So that he gives them out a message that the ultimate dominion lies with the God, not with the human creation, humans, because ultimate authority is God, not the humans. And I would like to conclude with few points in the study, that Umar's past religious universe became a site of memory to escape slave meaninglessness, and it actually actualizes the religious socio-historical dimension of the previous environment through memories. And the life actually reconciles African past with the American present, the ascribed identity with the achieved religious identity also. And he also employs religious memory in order to protest the slavery. Thank you. These are my references that I have used over the research. Thank you so much.
Okay, I am Enrico Gori from University of Udine in Italy. I am professor of statistics since 40 years. I like to present you this application of a Rush model in agriculture. The Rush model are used in many fields of application, from psychometric to finance, and we apply this model in particular to the measure of attitude towards kiwi fruit. Let's see. Rush model are widely used in many fields of research to produce interval scale measures using data that are ordinal. So from ordinal data, Rush model produce interval scale measure. They have obviously a greater property than ordinal data. For example, in mathematics, you can, when you make a test in math, you can have 0 or 1, 0 incorrect, 1 correct. Obviously, 1 denotes more ability towards math than 0. In psychometric, for example, if you ask, sometimes I get sad, and you ask to answer with 1, 2, 3, 4, like one face for true. Obviously, 4 denote much more depression than 1. And for example, in a questionnaire for kiwi fruit attitude, we have, for example, this kind of a question. I'm willing to pay 25% more than usual price to test a red kiwi. And another question like, I'm willing to pay 50% more than the usual price to test a real kiwi. And you ask to answer with a score 1 to 4, 1 total disagreement, 4 total agreement. Obviously, 4 denote much more attitude towards kiwi fruit than 1. And clearly, in question Q22, is easier to endorse than question Q23. This means that if a person answers 3 to question 23, must necessarily answer at least 3 to question 22. And if a person answer 4, for example, to question 23, so total agreement to pay 50%, and answer 1 to question 22, something is wrong with the data. Maybe this person answer randomly, and is better to exclude from the analysis. This is simple idea. This simple idea is the basis of fundamental property of measure obtained by Rush model, that is specific objectivity. Our questionnaire was this one. In the Rush approach, the main idea is that the items proposed may have different difficulty to be endorsed. This difficulty is called beta J, and person have different ability, attitude towards what we want to measure, like math ability, depression, or attitude towards kiwi fruit, and will be denoted with a alpha I. So beta is the difficulty to endorse the item. Alpha is the attitude towards, for example, kiwi fruit. In this case, the answer person I to the item J is a score 1 to K. It depends on the balance from ability and difficulty. In the Rush model, we assume that the probability of answering K to the question J from the person I follow a model that, like this, that is called rating scale model. For example, here are the two questions, Q22 and Q23, that I showed before. Obviously, Q23 must be more difficult to endorse than Q22. The estimate of the model allow you to draw this picture that is called right map. In this map, on the left, you find the person ability or attitude, alpha I, and on the right, you find the item difficulty, beta J. And this is the common scale on which they are both measured. So attitude and difficulty of items are measured on the same scale. For example, these are the question. This is the question regarding the willing to pay 50% more than the usual price. And this question has a difficulty of 3. Instead, this is the question Q22, willing to pay 25% more than the usual price. And this difficulty is only 2, obviously less than the preceding question. Here, for example, you find the question, I like to eat kiwi fruit as it is, that has a difficulty of minus, almost -3. Remember that this scale is an interval scale, so the 0 is like the 0 in temperature is subjective. Okay, so this in the top is the hardest item. This is in the bottom is the easiest item. And this, for example, on the left, are people that like kiwi fruit very much. They answer with high score to the all items. Instead, this one in the bottom are people which like kiwi fruit not very much. Okay. So what is specific objectivity in practice? For example, in this case, you get this part of the sample we call the upper sample, the people they like kiwi fruit very much, and this is lower sample, the people that don't like kiwi fruit very much. Okay, now these are the estimate of the difficulty of the item, measure with the upper sample and measure with the lower sample. And this is the 45-degree straight line. And you can see that the difficulty of the item estimated with upper and lower sample are almost identical. They lie in a 95% confidence interval around an identity line. So what does it mean? It means that whatever sample you take, you end up with the same estimate. If you take a sample in another country, we made the research in France, Italy, Spain, and Germany. But if you take a sample in another country, you end up with exactly the same estimate. I mean, exactly from the statistical point of view in the range of an interval, confidence interval. So this means specific objectivity. It is very impressive property that if the data satisfy the model, the Rush model, you always end up with this kind of results. Now, we take the attitude towards kiwi fruit measured by the model, as we use a dependent variable in a regression model where we use this one like independent variable, like sex. For example, sex 2 are female, and this means that they have a coefficient 0.217. This means that female are statistically more have statistically higher attitude toward kiwi than men. And for example, age 5 are old people. They have lower attitude towards kiwi fruit. In this country, there are Germany and Spain, have in general lower attitude toward kiwi fruit than Italy and France. So we estimate from this model the average attitude toward kiwi of people for different combination of the independent variable, and we end up with these results. The lower attitude, this minus 0.562, is for people in Germany, male and oldest people with low income. This is a lower attitude. The highest attitude, 1.618, is for people in country 1 and 4, Italy and France, for lower age, with high income, and so on. In conclusion, for this analysis, we may conclude that in marketing surveys, Rush model is a valid methodology for cleaning the data from people that answer at random. I didn't show this, but there is a way to select people that answer at random and exclude them from the analysis. And so we clean the data. Rush model is a way to clean the data from people they didn't answer. If a people answer at random in a questionnaire, is not useful to measure what you want to measure. And we can also exclude items belonging to different dimensions, poorly formulated and producing valid estimate of measure of interest, attitude in this case towards kiwi fruit. The estimated measure can be used in marketing research for customer segmentation, and this segmentation provides good insights in conjoint marketing analysis, not shown here, but we made an application very interesting using these results. So I thank you very much. This is my mail. And I hope in the future you can love Rush model you too in your application.
The topic of my research paper is the impact of motivation on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction of male and female special educators. Introduction. Special education refers to the education of children with physical, cognitive, language, learning, sensory, and or emotional abilities that deviate from those of the general population. Now, in India, we have around 2.4 million children with physical or mental disabilities. And according to the UN, we have a world disability population of 950 million. Special education sometimes is called special needs education because the needs of the children differ from the kind of deformity they suffer from. It is the education of children who differ socially, mentally, or physically from the average to such an extent that they require modification of usual school practices. That means the school should be disabled friendly with the special facilities for easy access and barrier-free access for the children. Special education educators face same issues and concerns as general teachers, along with the whole host of special needs and specific issues. But lack of motivation, stress, and anxiety can intensify these concerns. And sometimes they work under increased workload and hostile environment, large classes, the number of students beyond their capacity of handling, and delay in payment of salaries, poor working environment, poor conditions of service are major causes of anxiety, stress, and lack of job satisfaction in special educators. We know all teaching jobs are difficult tasks because teaching is a typical job and it demands and presupposes a lot of quality from teachers, which is not so with many other occupations. When it comes to special education teachers, they are a high-risk group prone to low job satisfaction, low self-efficacy, and increased stress, anxiety, and burnout as a result. Especially in India, special education is mostly in the hands of NGOs and social workers. The government does not run many special education institutions. The result is that the working environment is poor, the remuneration is poor, and their fringe benefits are much less compared to teachers or professors working in other institutions. And now the procedure I followed for this research is individual special educators in the 3 western districts of Uttarakhand were contacted for the data collection. The data was collected using standardized tools. They were already standardized and they were validated. And their motivation scale, stress scale, anxiety scale, and job satisfaction scale. Technical aspects were controlled to avoid biases and discrepancies during the data collection. Technical aspects like leaving the questionnaire with the teachers for too long or giving them too short a time, and also not giving them enough opportunities to discuss the questionnaire with their colleagues, so that there is no question of opinionated by people teachers getting opinionated by their colleagues and friends. And now the area of the study is marked in green, that is 3 western districts of the state of Uttarakhand in India. The rationale of the study: there are 2.4 million children with disabilities in India, according to the Chief Commissioner for People with Disabilities India 2021 report. And also, as per UN's latest report, we have around 950 million disabled people in the world. Out of that, proportionally, around 400 million are expected to be children between the age of 0 and 18. The educational well-being of these children are of inevitable consequences to the development of the nation. And research in special education has studied the various problems confronting special education, but there has not been much research on the impact of motivation on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction of special educators with regards to gender. Now, the theoretical framework. The research employed purposive sampling designed for the study, because this is a target group which we will not find everywhere. They are found only in special education schools. So I adopted the purposive sampling method for the study. The variables include both dependent and independent variables. The sample comprises of 167 special educators. And for the analysis of the data, descriptive and inferential statistics was used. The hypothesis formulated for this particular study is, the null hypothesis is, there is no significant difference in the impact of motivation on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction of male and female special educators. And the alternative hypothesis is, there is a considerable difference in the impact of motivation on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction of male and female special educators. And now, the discussion and the findings of the study. Since there are multiple variables involved, independent variable motivation, and then we have dependent variable stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction, I went in for multivariate test. And the multivariate test scores are displayed here, and it is too much to go into details, and I know the time is running out. So I will go into the analysis of the result. From the above table, it is seen that the variable motivation is evaluated for gender, and dependent variable used are anxiety, job satisfaction, and stress. The statistical values of Pillai's trace, Wilkins, Lamba, Hodlinger's trace, and Roy's largest root attained are 0.8479, 0.368, 1.192, and 0.471 respectively. And we know all these are not statistically significant, but we cannot draw a conclusion unless we apply further tests on this. the values are found to be insignificant, and it is further analyzed through tests of between subject effects. Let's see what does the test of subject between subject effects show. Here also, if you look at the significant column, we see all those test results are insignificant. So let's see what does interpretation say. In the above table, is shown that the variable motivation is evaluated for the sum of squares with the different independent variables such as anxiety, job satisfaction, stress for their gender. The obtained values for the different variables, anxiety, job satisfaction, and stress are found to be 1.51255, 9.05509, and 7.54006 respectively. It can be inferred from the above table that the significance value for all multivariate test is insignificant. Therefore, we are not rejecting the null hypothesis. We are accepting. We are not accepting the alternative hypothesis, because we are accepting there is no significant difference between the experienced teachers and non-experienced teachers in special education, and both of them are more or less same. The present investigation found there is significant impact of motivation on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction. There is no significant impact on stress, anxiety, and job satisfaction concerning the gender of the special educators. And this may be because due to the fact that male as well as female teachers might be enjoying equal status of autonomy, independence, irrespective of their gender differences. Maybe the institutions where they work, they are treated equally when it comes to the salary, the facilities, the fringe benefits, and the respect they get, etc. And moreover, both sexes enjoy equal incentives, promotion opportunities, and cordial and warm relationship with their students. At the system level too, both groups have to face similar kinds of difficulties or problems, if any. And research in the same field has shown that Chikon and Koff and Kyriakou and Skatlev found there was no perceivable difference in stress and anxiety with regard to teacher demographic factors like gender, age, and teaching experience. Ahmed and Jara, Neelam, Sendil Kumar, and Kannappa, and Aftab, Dahir, and Khatun found that male and female primary school teachers are not differing significantly on the measure of job satisfaction. So it shows that more or less the findings of my research is in concurrence with the findings of these people whom I have quoted. Now, the conclusion is that male as well as female teachers might enjoy equal autonomy and independence, irrespective of the gender differences. Moreover, both sexes enjoy equal incentives, promotional opportunities, and cordial and warm relationship with their students. So that may be the reason why there is no significant difference when it comes to the gender of the special educators, and also when it comes to the experience of the male and female special educators. At the system level too, both groups have to face similar kinds of difficulties and problems, if any. It is important to note that this study only looked at the special educators and may not be applicable to other professions or industries. Additionally, the study relied on self-reported data, and this may not be always be accurate. And now, before I move into the reference, I have few suggestions for further studies. Now, this research comprised only of 167 special educators. So further research can be undertaken by including a larger sample and also covering a larger geographical area. And the second suggestion would be this: we can see whether the gender has any impact on job satisfaction or the anxiety and stress of people who are working in other fields. And the next suggestion would be we can include more background variables like geographical area, the background of the respondents, and the kind of institutions they work with, is government or private, etc., so that this research can be given a wider area of coverage and can comprise of a wider sample. And these are some of the important works I consulted for my research. And before I say thank you, actually my first slide in order to come on the screen, I'm sorry for that. My name is Devasriachan TP, and I am a research student in C University in Dehradun, and I am an advocate by profession.
I believe my slide is visible for you. Yeah, I'm Nishant, third year production engineering student of National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. And yeah, this is my first conference presentation, and I believe this is my first step towards my research career. And I'll be talking for 10 minutes about analysis and prediction of edible oil production in India. And first of all, I thank you for giving you, and thank you to give me this opportunity for the presentation. And I would like to thank my full research team who guided me and who helped me with the research work. And let me begin the presentation. First of all, I would like to provide some background about the oilseed scenario in India, oilseed and edible oil scenario in India. The country, India is one of the world's top producer of edible oil. The oilseed accounts around 13% of the total cultivation area and around 3% of the GDP, and it provides 10% value to all agricultural commodities. Even though our oilseed sector is a huge one among the world, we still import 50% of the edible oil. There is a huge amount of consumption, and the edible oil production is not in phase with the consumption, which results in a heavy reliance on imports. And I guess this is something we need to look under it, and we will see like why is this situation like this, and how to like improve our production of oil seeds in our country. And these are some of the previous studies who analyzed the edible oil scenario in India. First, Gulati et al. And Gulati and the others, like they attempted to like investigate some issues regarding the edible oil and oilseed scenario in India. And Pan et al. He also used some incomplete demand system to account for household purchases of edible oil in India. And he analyzed he analyzed the present production and inadequacies, and like provide an outline of current scenario and future scenario. And limitations of these studies, they only provided the descriptive analysis. They didn't take up the oilseed data, and like they didn't provide a predictive analytics or mathematical analytics, such kind of thing. And they didn't identify the future trends like productivity forecast and those kind of things. And yeah, so the purpose and scope of this study, we have seen that the previous studies were limited to only descriptive analysis. So this study bridges that gap by applying predictive analysis technique to forecast the edible oil production in India. And yeah, we combine with the demand supply analysis of the oil. So one more thing, we use ARIMA model to produce accurate forecasts of edible oil productivity, and we also forecast the edible oil demand using the ARIMA model, and we compare both the demand, and we just provide some suggestions to enhance the oilseed productivity in India. And let's see how we have done that. And yeah, this is the demand supply gap of edible oil. Domestic availability is our domestic production. Net availability is the total demand of edible oil in India. And yeah, and the line which denotes the import. We could see that the total demand for edible oil in India is much larger than the domestic production. And yeah, so this results in a huge amount of imports of edible oil. And like you can see see that from the graph. The graph ensures there is a huge amount of import. Yeah, and the results of our model. First coming on to the edible oil part, we forecasted the edible oil for 2023 to 2024 and 2024 to 2025, and we have the values are in million tons. Our model like predicted the outputs with an error of 0.81 for the edible oil, and edible oil demand was predicted with an root mean squared error of 1.61, and mean absolute error for edible oil is 0.75 and 1.34 for edible oil demand. And the table shows the values for the edible oil. We could see from the table that the values remain stagnant for the edible oil predictions. The values are like, both the values are like 11 million tons for the upcoming years, and we could see the demand is 27 and 28 million tons, which is like nearly 2.5%, like sorry, double the more than double the amount of this. The demand is more than double the amount of the production. So there needs to we need to do something to improve our productivity to ensure that we cope up with the demand in our country. So these are some suggestions which we provide and which we collected from some of the literatures. Of course, I'm not able to cover all the suggestions we have given in the paper due to some time constraints, and because I have to keep my presentation below 10 minutes. So these are some suggestions, some key suggestions we collected from the literature, and we have I'm providing it here for you. First, we can follow relay cropping. For relay cropping, which means, let's say like paddy, we cultivate paddy like from in South India. It's basically cultivated like during the monsoon season, like from August to January, during those kind of season, and after that the land remains empty until the next season of paddy cultivation. So that time can be utilized by planting oilseeds crops there, so we could get we could improve our oilseeds production, which ultimately results in the improvement of edible oil production. So, and the next one is we could follow intercropping and sequential cropping approaches to increase the area under cultivation of oilseeds. This is one more technique. And next one, coming to industry level technique where processing and those kind of things are involved, we could enhance the post harvest processing and storage facilities, including like for oil refining, hydrogenation, crushing and solvent extraction, and yeah, and one more important suggestion is genetic engineering approaches. Genetic engineering approaches, like it's getting a lot of attention these days, and it can be used to enhance the oil content in the oilseed crops. And next, I would like provide a conclusion for the research. India accounts for about 20% of the global oilseed production area, but still India imports 50% of edible oil. India is the largest importer and the largest producer, and the predictions show that the edible oil production to remain constant over the next years, which is also justified by Thapa from his statement. Even though the nation achieved great strides in oilseed production after the Yellow Revolution, which was in 1985, the industry has now reached a standstill. And we could also see from our predictions where both the values were 11 million tons for the upcoming years, and so we have to improve it, and the future research can be extended to each oilseed producing state. Like one can analyze every state where oilseed is produced in India and provide a detailed analysis of the production in every state, and the climatic conditions can be researched over to suggest suitable crops and cropping patterns for each climatic condition. And further, for forecasting, for the latest machine learning and deep learning algorithms like neural networks, artificial neural networks, and long short-term memory, which is frequently used in time series analysis, these can be used to obtain more forecast. And yeah, that's it for my presentation. Thank you for providing me this opportunity.
Everyone. I thank all the team members for this opportunity. And the topic for my the topic of my research paper is identifying the archetype of Scarlet Woman in the novella Unveiled through Mark Chagall's lithograph, Tamar Judah's daughter-in-law. So these are the major highlight areas. The aim, introduction, representation of the biblical women in art, the archetype of Scarlet Woman, Tamar as the Scarlet Woman in Unveiled, conclusion and references. So the aim of my research is to identify the archetype of the Scarlet Woman in a novel with the help of art, and to how the study of religious art and literature is a one-fold dimension that allows the better understanding of a woman and her psyche. The first, the introduction about art and literature. So by understanding literature through visual imagery is a very common yet an elevated phenomenon that has been happening for a very long time. And the study has observed that biblical women have been portrayed through art for a very long time, and it's a pure reflection of the society's attitudes towards women and the recognition of their roles. And so these depictions of biblical women, they keep changing according to historical and social perceptions. So the main, the woman that we are talking about, her name is called Tamar, and she is considered the first foreign matriarch of Christ. And she has been painted by numerous artists around the world, and a lot of books have been written on her. And the highlight of this woman is that she was in a society that followed the levirate marriage laws, which made a childless widow marry the kin of her own deceased husband's family. So she was denied of those rights, and being a childless widow in a particular society did not do her any good, and she had to commit herself to her own father-in-law. And but then her ways have been justified by God and by the society, because she was on the justice had to be done to her. So a probe into her life reveals another side of this woman who has been termed as a sinful woman, a woman who committed incest by the mainstream society. So this is the painting, Tamar Judah's daughter-in-law by Mark Chagall. It was done in 1960. And this is actually a lithograph that paints the exact pivotal moment in the history of Jewish people. And the use of the painter's brilliant use of color and symbolism, it reflects deep levels of the understanding of Jewish heritage and its view on the role of women in its society. Now, representation of biblical women in art, what is the importance? Traditional wisdom or the mainstream society suggests that the majority of world cultures and religions, they are all established upon a particular patriarchal structure, so that representations of the male body project attitudes of power while the female body projects negative attributes. So a very recent scholarship by feminist art historians, critics, cultural historians, they have provided new ways of looking at female figures and to decide and to portray the role of women in religious art, which includes the history of women artists patrons, collectors, and most recently, critics and curators. So iconography of specific women in history of a religion, it affords the opportunity to witness how religion shapes and informs cultural, societal, and even legal definitions of women. And so women iconographies in religious art can both inform and expand global recognition of the categories of gender, race, and ethnicity, as well as research methodologies. The third part focuses on what is the archetype of the Scarlet Woman. And to start off with, an archetype can be defined as a recurrent symbol or motif that occurs in literature, art, or mythology. And the archetype of the Scarlet Woman talks about how bold, untamed, and utterly rebellious feminine a female can be. And the Scarlet Woman represents the aspect of women that longs to dive into the rivers of wild abandon and forget all notions of what is appropriate and what is not. So if a woman finds it fearful of taking the next step forward towards a cherished goal out of a sense of fear, then that's the moment to embrace the archetype of the Scarlet Woman. A woman of today daring to be wild, daring to be heard, daring to command attention, daring to step outside of her comfort zones, daring to be the brightest fire within the room, dare to let the most free aspects of oneself to take the lead, is the need of the hour for a woman of the 21st century. And so she has the archetype of the Scarlet Woman in her. So Tamar as the Scarlet Woman, which is portrayed in the novel Unveiled. So Tamar is actually an alternative voice in the Old Testament because of her personality, social understanding, freedom of identity, and self-movement. And this adds a new dimension to the biblical narratives in the Old Testament. So as we all know, Jewish society was a male-dominated one in the history of Israel. And in such a context, Tamar becomes a counter voice. She has no children in her life and she's a widow, and she understands that having a child meant gaining social space and identity and thereby acceptance. So she goes through a sexual relationship with her father-in-law, whom he was the one who had denied her of those rights. And this event is one where she reimagines and regains her own space. And the body is a holy space, but it also has a social, religious, and cultural space as well. And Tamar's body is a powerful tool of social liberation because she has no name of her own and only the identity of being a childless widow. So after her husband's death, Tamar is out of her religious life because Jewish religion has too many religious male-centered laws. But here, Tamar's decision is more powerful as she challenges her father-in-law's ethics and fundamentalist religious system. And her sexual relationship is an attempt to return to a covenant relationship, which would thereby build her religious fellowship as well. Now, how is Tamar a different motivation for us? So although many modern scholars may consider Tamar despicable for seducing her father-in-law, the narrator and the artist expose him as the shameful and insincere person. So not only does he refuse to carry out his obligation to provide for the posterity of his family, but he pronounces a cruel judgment on her who is doing right. So in contrast to his disgraceful behavior, Tamar actually risks her life to continue his family into the future. And Tamar bears the ancestors of most of the Jehudite clans and goes to be a very important matriarch of Christ. So in conclusion, what I can say is that when viewed comparatively, religious depictions of women, they depict a flexibility of the female figure, both as an individual and as a motive, which stimulates new perspectives into the female gender. And any examination of the iconography of women within the framework of religious art should expand the boundaries of women's position in the societal and religious enterprises. So these are the few of the references that I have taken from my study. Thank you.
Topic is study to shift from motorized to non-motorized transport, a case of Nasik city. I'm a MTech student from Nasik, pursuing MTech in town and country planning from Sandeep University. So as we proceed, this is my flow of presentation. Yeah, first we'll understand the background. What is exactly non-motorized transport? So non-motorized transport basically includes walking and cycling, in which there is no motor used in the transport. The advantages of non-motorized transport are low carbon mobility, low energy consumption, less accidental cases, and traffic management. So why is it a need for Nasik city? So as we see the data collected from the Regional Transport Office from 2016 to 2023, the motor vehicle count has gone from 7,32,000 to 20,62,000, which which results in increasing the pollution level and the traffic level on the streets. And even the accidental data has been gone to average annual rate of 6.9%. Yes. So these are the objectives of my study: to study the policies, standards, guidelines, norms in the field of non-motorized transport in India and foreign context, to study the street and travel patterns of the study area and find out the willingness ratio of people and potential trips that can shift towards non-motorized transport, to propose a comprehensive plan where NMT acts as a first and last mile connectivity. The scope of work, I'll move forward. Okay. This is my methodology. Basically, I have done a questionnaire survey in my study area, and based on my questionnaire survey, I have derived some conclusions. Yeah, this is my study area. I have selected this study area because motorized vehicles are mostly used by like most of the people use motorized vehicle uh, with high standard people like HIG, HMIG people. And this is the area where most of the motor vehicles are used and less NMT is used. So I selected this area which had a huge scope for the shift from motorized to non-motorized transport. The site has 3 schools, 2 colleges, 1 marketplace, and 1 public transport station. Yeah, this is the sample size survey I did for my questionnaire survey, which the sample size came to 96. After that, the data collection was done with the help of questionnaire survey, where various parameters like age, gender, occupation, trip length, willingness ratio was identified. I got total 117 responses, of which this is the chart for the ratio of people who are using NMT presently. And after the improvement of the infrastructure, this is the second chart is for the people who are willing to use NMT after the improvisation of the infrastructure. Yeah. So there were as I said that the research was done on various parameters. So after the research, I found out that 88.9% of the people are willing to shift. Okay, and 8.5% they can be shifted, and almost 2% are not willing to shift. So according to age, this chart shows us the parameter of age, like people who use NMT to work, to reach to the school, college, coaching, and to do grocery shopping and other shopping in their locality. These people are presently using, and the red highlighted numbers are the potential of people who will be using after the improvement of infrastructure. Yeah, same I have done with the distance. Distance, right? Trip length also matters a lot while we are shifting for NMT. So these are the different parameters. These are the different distances I have calculated, and according to the trip length, these are the highlighted numbers are the people who are willing to shift towards NMT after the improvement of infrastructure. These are some of the barriers which I calculated. And the highest barriers calculated were a feeling of insecurity on footpaths, no dedicated footpath, safety from vehicles, and yeah, yes. This is actually my solution. This is proposal 1. This is my main study area. The blue highlighted part is the road where it is a connecting road from Old Nasik to the main Gangapur Dam area. So it is the main road where we can get all kind of public transport, rickshaws, and yeah, it is visible to the road is visible to every kind of hotspot area. So, and this area is the residential area. So from point A to point B, most of the people go to point B to fetch a public transport. So according to the analysis done, 16% of the people hire rickshaw for that. 36.8% of people hire private vehicle. 23.1% of people hire Ola, and 23.9% of people walk. So there is a high potential in the highlighted area from A to B that people can use non-motorized transport from point A to B, so that to hire a public transport over here. So the conclusion derived is the highlighted yellow portion from A to B has most of the potential to shift towards non-motorized transport. And the path highlighted from C to D, it has a potential because there is a big institutional campus, and the pink highlighted area is a big marketplace where there is lots of traffic congestion in the peak hours. So if proper infrastructure is provided, people can go walking or cycling to the marketplace and to the institutional campus. So it will be a hassle-free process. Yeah. There is an insecurity of like people are showing insecurity while walking on footpath. That is because the rickshaw are parked on the roadside, and the people walking on footpath are not visible. So this is one of the proposed section which I have proposed, that we can plan a rickshaw stand on the inner side, then a footpath, then a road, so that people walking on the footpath will not feel insecure, and the percentage of walking people will increase. Okay, so we have also seen that a public bicycle sharing system which has been proposed in India has been not very successful in Nasik. So I just thought of finding out the barriers. So the barriers were, the most important barrier was low quality of bicycles, not user friendly, and not aware, not well maintained, and far away from the house. So other barriers we can manage, but it was far away from house. So this was my solution for the barriers, that this is a residential area, and existing PBS bicycle area is it is like 1.5 kilometer away from the main residential area. That's why when people actually want to use it, people actually need to go till here and then they will use it. So it is not very feasible for people to use it from here. So instead of parking 10 cycles over there, we can park 2 cycles in the residential core areas, so that people residing over here can just, if there is some urgency or they need to take, so they can just go and quickly access the public bicycles. And even when they are visible to their eyes, if they are close to their houses, they will feel the ownership also, that they can use the cycle. So this is my second proposal. Yeah, the conclusion says the study concludes that there is a huge potential to shift from motorized to non-motorized transport. Certain categorized trips can be converted to NMT. Specific barriers like age, trip length, comfort can come across and stop people from using NMT. Okay. Every area needs to be studied at a micro level, and a comprehensive planning should be proposed considering the site conditions and people's approach towards NMT. Public bicycle sharing system not being a very successful project, but if the drawbacks are studied properly with existing site conditions and people's perspective about it, PBS can be designed and can be brought into action again. Yeah, these were my references, which I referred for my research. Yes, thank you.